Hello, my name is Matthias and welcome to the FPL Scope and the team selection video for Game Week 5. Before we go into my plans for Game Week 5, we have to take a look at what happened in Game Week 4, and I'm pretty happy to show you because I got 91 points, which was really good for me. I gained some rank and I'm now top 188k in the world, or top 189k if you want to round it up. And that means I'm only 21 points behind the top 10k, which I'm pretty happy about, but it could have been only 11 points behind the top 10k because I did a -4 transfer that actually ended up costing me quite a bit because I sold the Berchiese right before his match against Wolverhampton just because I really wanted Sterling for his fixtures against Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth. And the only reason, or not the only reason, but like a big part of the reason that I actually did this transfer, even though it was a -4 and I sold the player with a good fixture, is the fact that I would have been priced out of doing this transfer if I waited a bit longer. So I think the deadline was on the Friday, and then by the Saturday, I was priced out of doing this transfer. So I kind of had to do it if I wanted Sterling, especially for this game that is coming up now against Bournemouth, which is the team Sterling always scores against. I also felt like he could do really well against Nottingham Forest. That didn't end up happening. He blanked, got 2 points. Meanwhile, Ebrechese got 8 points from scoring against Wolverhampton. Could have been even worse. He was on 10 points for quite a bit of the game as well, when it looked like he was scoring the winning goal. But yeah, pretty poor transfer, especially in hindsight. But at the same time, I'm happier about having Sterling going forward than I would be having Eze going forward, so not the worst. In Game Week 3, I also did 2 transfers where I actually lost points from the transfers that game week, but then I ended up getting those points back, or even more points back this game week, because Alvarez ended up with 14 points and was a huge hero for me in Game Week 4. He had 2 assists and 1 goal, I think, in Man City's match, and that was really good for me. Foden had an assist as well. Foden still hasn't really performed as well as I was hoping, but he has had 2 assists in 2 games now, and that's only in like 95 minutes because he played barely any minutes in that Game Week 3 fixture. So my City guys, pretty happy about them in general. Haaland obviously got a hat-trick, 20 points times 2, which is 40 for me as a captain. Happy days, finally the City boys are performing for me. Chelsea players, not so much. I have a pretty shoddy history when it comes to both City players and Chelsea players, but at least the City players now have been doing well for me. Sterling, 2 points. Chilwell with only 1 point. Not the best, but I think Chelsea, with their decent fixtures, I would not be too keen to sell anyone. Even if I had Nick Jackson, I probably still would keep him because they have such good fixtures and they are creating a lot of chances still, even though they blanked against Nottingham Forest. So yeah, I think Chelsea players are players that you'd probably want to keep, but especially for the midfield spots, maybe you want to sell Sterling to get someone else. But we'll get into the Game Week 5 plans pretty soon. When it comes to defensively, I also did another transfer, and that was Onana to Flecken, and that actually gained me 2 points because Onana got 0 points because they lost 3-1 against Arsenal. I think he also got a yellow card for time wasting as well, Onana. So, but either way, I was pretty happy doing that move just because it gained me 0.5 in the bank, and that was enough for me to do Eze to Sterling, which didn't end up working. But at the same time, yeah, like I said previously, I'm pretty happy about having Sterling in my squad going forward. Flecken only got 2 points though. He didn't get a clean sheet against Bournemouth, conceded 2 goals, and yeah, that was fine. 2 points. That's going to happen sometimes with your goalkeeper. I'm pretty happy about having Flecken going forward as well, much more than Onana. So for the future, I'm pretty happy about my transfers, but for this game week, I probably should have stayed away from at least the Eze to Sterling move, but that's just hindsight for you. Sometimes it's going to go wrong, so that's what happens. But yeah. When it comes to the rest of my team, Udogie got an assist, another assist for him, which is really nice to see. Didn't get a clean sheet though for Spurs, but that doesn't really matter that much. He got 5 points anyway, which is more than good enough for me with my defenders. Estupiñán only got 2 points. He was on clean sheet and not bonus, I think, but he was at least having a clean sheet very late in the match against Newcastle, and then they conceded against Callum Wilson. Because Callum Wilson keeps making my life miserable in FPL, but Estupiñán, like I've been saying in videos, pretty much every single video that I posted the past couple weeks, I think you should start Estupiñán every single game, and selling him especially would be really foolish, especially seeing as he has gone up in price from 5.0 to 5.3. So I don't know. I think just selling good value players, even though they have like some tougher fixtures, is not the best idea. And Estupiñán is going to be a season keeper for me, I'm pretty sure. Kind of the way how Trippier was the season keeper for me last season. And I know a lot of people are interested in doing the Estupiñán to Trippier move, but personally, I stay away, especially this game week, because Newcastle play Brentford, and I expect them to concede because Brentford are really good. And that's what Mbeumo showed, that he could score against Bournemouth as well. Scored really late in that game. A really nice goal, by the way. And Mbeumo is still, like, he's one of my most trusted players. I'm definitely keeping him as well. I think Estupinian and Mbeumo are the types of players that are much better value than their current price tag tells you. So yeah, I think they should be kept in pretty much every single team, and even bought if you don't have them. Especially Mbeumo is someone you should look into buying. Potentially not this game week against Newcastle, but going forward he's going to be really good. And Brentford players, as we'll get to discuss in this video, are pretty good against pretty much every team. So yeah, Mbeumo is fantastic. He got 8 points for me. Saka got 4 points, missed a huge chance against Man United. Also had a penalty taken away because of Havertz, I guess, diving. It was kind of a controversial decision, but I think most people agree that Havertz shouldn't have had the penalty, but it was really close to getting a penalty for Saka. I'd assume Saka would take it, not Ødegaard, but yeah. Saka, 4 points. Not the best, and there's also some rumors about Saka potentially being slightly injured or like having some hamstring issues or something like that. So yeah, I'm looking into that as well for Game Week 5, which is going to be interesting. But so far, so good for Saka. He's been a pretty decent player for me in FPL through 4 game weeks, and I don't really want to sell him unless he is injured, even though he has some pretty tough fixtures coming up. But yeah. Phil Foden, I've talked about. The last player I haven't talked about in my starting lineup is Mohamed Salah, who got 8 points. Again, really happy with that. I was pretty concerned after the first half that he didn't look that threatening. He did have almost an assist for Darwin Núñez that got turned into an own goal from Matty Cash, but in the second half, Salah scored, popped up on a corner, like I've expected him to do, and now we're getting to the point where we're really close to Game Week 9, where Salah is going to be pretty much essential in FPL. So I don't really have any thought of selling Salah at any point now, even though the plan originally was selling him in Game Week 3, but I've just kept him, and he keeps producing as well. 8 points now, which is his highest score so far. I'm still waiting for that like massive double-digit haul, maybe like 20 points at some point. Could be feasible for Salah. We know he's done that in the past, so yeah, I'm really happy that I have Salah and I don't have to worry about how I should get money to get him in, because yeah, that would be a headache going forward. Once again, I have 12 points as my number 1 bench guy. Last week it was Destiny Udogie who got 12 points, and he was number 1 on my bench. This time it was Archer for Cameron Archer for Sheffield United, who got 12 points. Goal and assist against Everton. Just happy that I have him again. Another thing that I was happy about with my Game Week 1 squad, like I was happy with Salah, I'm also happy that I chose Archer instead of Mubama, because now I have the better 4.5 attacker now that he has moved to Sheffield United, so I'm pretty happy about that. Saliba didn't get a clean sheet against Man United, which we expected, but Saliba is going to be nice to have as an insurance policy for Game Week 5, as we'll get into. Kabore didn't start against, I think it was West Ham in Game Week 4. It's a couple weeks now, so I can't remember exactly. But yeah, he didn't start his match, which is kind of worrying. But at the same time, he's also the end of my bench. But I'm hoping he gets to play in these upcoming games, and then he'll become potentially an option in Game Week 7. But that's pretty far into the future, so I don't really worry about that. And then we have Matt Turner, who is also under threat in terms of keeping his place. But 5 points from Turner. He kept a clean sheet against Chelsea, which was really surprising. And now I'm looking potentially into starting him. But before we get into that, I just want to go touch back on the whole Eze to Sterling thing, because there are some things that I actually discussed with Kevin on the FPL Scope podcast that I want to kind of discuss further in this video. And that is looking at the talismanic players versus the focal points of attack players. So Eze and Sterling are kind of examples of this. Sterling is more the type of player you expect to score even when the team that he's playing for is counterattacking, because he's that type of player to be like the furthest forward. Even though he's not a striker, he is like the one to take the chances that they get and be pretty far up the pitch. He doesn't really need the ball too much. He's not on set pieces. He's not on all that type of stuff like Eze. Eze, on the other hand, is more like the talisman. He's on free kicks. He's pretty much every attack goes through him for Crystal Palace. And that's why he's better suited to matches where Crystal Palace are on the front foot and are actually the team with the most possession. And the possession thing is something that I've looked more into and like I said, discussed on the FPL Scope podcast, which you can check out on this YouTube channel. But yeah, let's just go into talking about it. The talisman versus the focal point sort of table. So yeah, if you're unfamiliar with this table that I talked about on the FPL Scope podcast, this is pretty much just representing some of the key players for some of the better teams, especially in the league, or the more like the better attacking assets in FPL in general, and how they perform in general, points per match, compared to how they perform when, or how many points per match they get when their team has less than 50% possession in a game. So these stats are all from last season, and you pretty much have quite a big array of different players. And it's quite interesting to see which players perform better when their team has less possession and which players perform better when their team has more possession. And it is kind of ending up the way I was sort of expecting it to before I looked into these numbers. And that's the fact that, like I said, the focal points like Sterling, for example, we don't have Sterling in this table because he played for Chelsea, had a really bad season. I haven't really checked his numbers. I should probably check his numbers, but either way, this is more in line of thinking for Game Week 5, where there's a lot of people thinking about whether they should sell guys like Bruno Fernandes or Rashford, which are kind of the same thing, where Bruno Fernandes is the talisman and Rashford is sort of the focal point for Man United, and whether they should buy Maddison or Son. And at the same time, we have the same thing with Son and Maddison. Son is kind of the focal point where he sort of gets the big chances, while Maddison is like the hub who creates the chances and gets the free kicks and all that stuff. So I thought it was just interesting to look at those numbers. And like I expected, the talisman players kind of need more possession and being more the better team on the day to get more points. And compared to someone like Son, who actually got more points when his team had less possession. So yeah, just looking at this table, the top names are Ivan Toney, who plays for Brentford, who are a team that usually thrives when they have less possession. They're really good at going on the counter, and Toney is like both the talisman and the focal point for Brentford. He's the player that plays the furthest forward for Brentford. He's also on direct free kicks and stuff like that as well, but he was the best performer in the matches where his team had less than 50% possession. He actually performed 1.29 points per match better when his team had less than 50% possession compared to every other match, or like the total amount of matches that he played. Then you have Martinelli, who's also yet another player who's really good on the counter, really good with pace and really good finisher. So that bodes well for players that are, or that basically spells success for players that are good when their team has less possession. So Martinelli and Son are these types of players. Douglas Luiz is actually the best like talisman when it comes to scoring a lot of points when their team has less possession. He was kind of an outlier here, especially if you compare him to Ollie Watkins, who's pretty far down on this table. Aston Villa were actually the team where it was kind of the opposite, where the talisman gets more points when they're on the back foot and they have less possession. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, other than that, you have players like Barnes. Kane is sort of like the talisman and focal point type of player. Who sort of fits into both categories. But then you have Mbeumo and Rashford, who are more the type of focal point player who are not really like central to everything that's going on offensively, but they could score goals if they get the chances, and that's what they do. So yeah, it's just a really interesting table in terms of, especially also if you look at the plus minus side, which this table is ranked from. It's actually pretty even split. Like the middle of the table is Ødegaard, who performs whether he has possession or doesn't have possession. He pretty much has the same pretty high points per match of 5.72 in general and 5.62 when the Arsenal have less than 50% possession in their matches last season at least. But yeah, that's pretty much the line that we have here. And above Ødegaard, in the middle of the table, you have basically only focal points, and below Ødegaard you have pretty much mostly talisman type of players. So I thought that was interesting. So someone like Eze, you can see the matches where Crystal Palace are not the favorite player or the favorite team in that match, he's not going to perform that well, because he had 4.18 points per match last season, and in matches where they had less than 50% possession, he had only 3.26 points per match. So that means he's 0.92 points per match worse when his team has less than 50% possession, which is interesting. I think I should probably go and check the Sterling numbers as well, even though he had a really poor season. But it's hard to judge Sterling because he had a really poor season last season, and then all the seasons before that he played for Man City, who basically have like 1 or 2 matches with less than 50% each season. I actually checked the numbers of Haaland and De Bruyne, and both of those guys were really good no matter if they had possession or not. So the 2 matches that they had less than 50% possession, which was against Brighton and Arsenal, one was at home and one was away. I can't remember exactly which one was which, but in both of those matches, both Haaland and De Bruyne performed like gangbusters. Like they were about around 10 points. I think they got like 13 and 9 and 12 and 9 points or something like that. So yeah, I don't have them in the table, but they just performed in general, pretty much. But yeah, just thought it was interesting, especially for those of you guys considering whether to get Son or whether to get Maddison, whether to sell Rashford, whether to sell Fernandes. Looking at the fixtures, it seems like this next upcoming game against Sheffield United, I know a lot of people have talked about the low block and stuff when it comes to the captaincy decision between Son and Maddison, and I sort of fall onto the side, especially with these types of numbers, fall onto the side that Maddison is probably better suited at playing against a team like Sheffield United, where Spurs are probably going to be in possession most of the match and be in attack pretty much most of the match, playing against a really defensive side. And meanwhile, Son will probably outperform Maddison in the following two fixtures when they play it's Arsenal and Man United, I think, or something like that for Spurs, when they have sort of tougher fixtures. I think Son is the better pick compared to Maddison. At the same time, you have the Man United boys, and they play a couple teams that have pretty high lines and are like actually pretty attacking. And I sort of expect Rashford to kind of perform better than Fernandes through those matches, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see at least, but I think this is something you should put into consideration when you're choosing between the Man United midfielders, if you're choosing, because I see a lot of people who want to keep both of them. I think that's mostly out of fear more than like they think both of them will perform at the same time. It can happen, but I actually looked at the numbers from last season as well with Rashford and Fernandes. Through 38 game weeks that they played, Fernandes and Rashford, or both of them played around 38 game weeks. Some doubles, some blanks, stuff like that, but around 38 matches. And I think they played together in 34 out of the 38 matches they played. And in 8 of those instances, both of them got point returns. So that means, I don't know, around 25%-ish of matches, they will both get a return. So yeah, having two attacking players from Man United who don't really score that many goals, I'm not so sure if that's the best thing going forward. So I would probably lean towards selling one of your Man United assets to buy a Spurs asset. And I think personally, I would much rather have Son and Maddison going forward than I would have Fernandes and Rashford going forward. But that's just me. So if you can diversify and have one of each, probably a good idea. It's just the picking which player from each team you're going to have is probably the more difficult task. Currently, I'd probably lean towards, I don't know, Rashford and Maddison, maybe. I don't know. I think Son and Maddison is pretty much like a coin toss for the next 3 game weeks. But especially when a captain someone, it's probably Maddison more than Son for me. But at the same time, I feel like Haaland is better than both of them. And Salah potentially is also better than both of them. Salah versus Haaland is something that I'm going to discuss personally in my own team. So let's actually just jump into that straight away right now. So these are basically my Game 5 plans. And when it comes to transfers, I don't really have any options, I feel like. I'm just going to stand pat. I could potentially downgrade someone to... Maybe I could downgrade Foden to Diaby or something. I don't know. But... yeah, I don't have any money in the bank. Like I said, I had to do the money or do the transfer of SA to Sterling to afford it. And that's why I have 0.0 in the bank. Got no money left. Pretty happy about having Sterling though against Bournemouth, who he usually always scores against. But yeah, let's just go through the team one by one and let me explain why I've picked each player. So pretty much in goal, we have Matt Turner. Not 100% sure if he's going to start or not, which is going to be a really interesting aspect of this game week because Nottingham Forest play on the Monday. So I know a lot of people have Pickford on the bench and Turner starting. I have Flecken on the bench and Turner starting. So maybe we'll get a situation where potentially if Flecken keeps a clean sheet against Newcastle and saves a lot of shots, because Newcastle are expected to get a lot of shots off against Brentford, maybe I'll have 10 Flecken points and hoping, like crossing my fingers, that Flecken or that Turner doesn't start for Nottingham Forest, so I get Flecken off the bench. And meanwhile, you can have Pickford owners who once again get a match from Pickford where he doesn't get a clean sheet because they're playing Arsenal. They're expected to concede. So maybe Pickford owners are sitting there with 2 points from Pickford and hoping that Turner does play so they don't have to see Pickford come into their side. Could also be the other way. Maybe Everton get a clean sheet somehow, some way against Arsenal and Flecken concedes, and it will be the opposite where I'm hoping Turner starts and everyone else is hoping that Turner doesn't start. But yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting thing for them for the Monday game. And for the Monday game especially, I think it's just fun to have players from matches where you're going to watch them. So having Turner will make that Monday match a lot more bearable because Nottingham Forest against Burnley is not really the most interesting match to watch. But if I have Turner in goal and I'm dependent on his points, then it will be somewhat more interesting. But yeah, most people will also have Turner in goal because at least like most like engaged like FPL Twitter / FPLX managers, FPL Reddit, people who are on social media and play FPL or take FPL pretty seriously, most of them will probably have Turner in goal. So yeah, but either way, I think he has a decent chance of a clean sheet, like potentially against Burnley. I think Nottingham Forest are a pretty good defensive side, especially at home. Burnley haven't looked the best, even though they have scored in pretty much every game so far. But yeah, I feel like Turner is a better option than Flecken, who plays against Newcastle, who are a pretty good team. But at the same time, Flecken could surprise you and get points. So yeah, I'm not totally against using Flecken if Turner doesn't play. I'm more happy with having Flecken than those people that have Pickford would probably be happy about Turner not starting. So yeah, I think that's an interesting thing for the Monday game, if Turner starts or not, over Odysseas Vlachodimos or whatever his name is. Vlad, I just call him. Yeah. Ben Chilwell against Bournemouth, expecting good things again. I'm just slightly worried that Chilwell is not going to start or is going to play further back than he has used to so far, because Chelsea have gotten a lot of criticism after this past game week. Pochettino, so maybe he wants to change up his system and not play Chilwell as a left winger anymore. But hopefully for me, he still plays that same tactic, because I think Bournemouth are a team that likes to press up and give a lot of space to the opposition team because they try to win the ball. So I think Chilwell can take advantage of that and get a pretty high score this game week. So yeah, pretty hopeful for Chilwell. Same thing with Udogie. I think, like I said, Spurs are going to pretty much just dominate the game against Sheffield United, and that means Udogie will be pretty far up the pitch. Maybe the low block will kind of shut down the channels to run into for Udogie, but if Spurs get an early goal, then Udogie will have a lot of space, I'm sure. So it's definitely match dependent as well, whether or not you, like the same thing with Maddison and Son that I was talking about. If Spurs score their first goal pretty early, then Sheffield United will have to go up, and that will get some more space for Son. So yeah, it's difficult. One game week is really difficult to predict. It's more, you have to look at several game weeks. But yeah, I think Udogie, either way, good clean sheet chances against Sheffield United, even though Archer is probably going to ruin that clean sheet for Udogie, but decent attacking return chances, good defensive return or clean sheet chances for Udogie. So pretty happy about having him as well. And then finally, the third defender that I have starting is Estepinian. Like I said, I just want to keep starting Estepinian. I always use the example of him playing against Arsenal in a title hunt last season and getting 18 points. I think Brighton can beat pretty much every team as well. They showed against Newcastle that they can be the best team on the pitch, even against tough opposition. So yeah, I think Estepinian can get both attacking returns and a clean sheet potentially, even though they play against Man United. And that's going to be a really interesting game, because I don't have any Man United player at all, not defensively and certainly not offensively, where a lot of people have Rashford and Fernandes, or Rashford or Fernandes for that matter. So that's going to be a huge game for me, Man United against Brighton, especially seeing as I'm starting Estepinian, and I'm seeing a lot of other managers benching him and some even selling him. So it's going to be a huge match for me as well, Brighton against Man United, and hopefully Brighton can get a result from there. But Man United are really good at home at Old Trafford, so it's going to be a really interesting game for sure. Then we have Mohamed Salah, who's currently my vice captain. I might be tempted to use him as my captain. He plays against Wolverhampton, and Wolverhampton have been pretty lackluster so far. They conceded 2 goals, even though they dominated against Man United in game week 1. They conceded a lot of chances against Everton, probably should have conceded several goals against Everton as well. They conceded 3 goals against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace have looked pretty inept going forward so far this season. So I think Wolverhampton's there for the taking, and they're kind of a club in disarray who might go down this season. So Salah is definitely a decent captaincy option. But at the same time, I'm still in the minority in terms of having Salah at all in my team. So he's going to get differential points if I captain him or not. So I'm pretty happy about just having Salah, but I might also captain him for maximum damage if potentially, if I judge, I don't know, it's between him and Haaland, but I'll get to Haaland pretty soon as well. Foden plays against West Ham, just like Haaland, and Foden actually has a pretty good record against West Ham, and it seems like he's going to be a pretty sure starter now as well. I think both Kovacic and Jack Grealish have been absent from Man City training this, or at least today, as of this recording, Thursday. So I think Foden is a pretty certain starter, and he usually plays pretty well against West Ham. So I think Foden could be the key to unlock the low block that West Ham have. Obviously, as a West Ham fan, I know how West Ham play, and I know how they fare against Man City usually. So I think it's going to be a tight game, but I think Foden might be the key to unlock the West Ham defense, which I'm not hoping for personally because I want West Ham to win, even though I have 3 City offensive players in FPL. But yeah, I think Foden has decent point potential this game week, and I think he is a pretty sure starter as well, which is always the fear with Man City players in general, as we'll get to with Julian Alvarez in attack. But yeah, Saka plays against Everton. I know it's an away fixture. I know Arsenal have struggled away from home against Everton. I think Kevin said that on the podcast yesterday, that the last 5 fixtures at Goodison Park, Arsenal haven't won a single one of them against Everton. So they're kind of Arsenal's bogey team, and especially away from home, Saka hasn't had the best numbers. So yeah, potentially that could be the potential transfer that I haven't listed there. Maybe I sell Salah, but the thing is that I can't afford Son because I don't have any money in the bank. So it would be potentially Saka to Maddison, and if I get any sort of indication that Saka is sort of like struggling with injuries and stuff, that might potentially be the transfer that I do, because that would save me some money as well. And I don't think Saka has particularly strong fixtures going forward, because they had pretty tough home fixtures and pretty easy away fixtures, but Saka's pretty poor away. So Saka is probably the player that I'm most looking to sell potentially in my team, but I'm pretty happy with him starting against Everton as well if he is fully fit, because Saka can get points against pretty much everyone, even though it's away. He can get some points against Everton. Then we have Raheem Sterling, who plays away against Bournemouth. He always scores against Bournemouth. That has always been a thing for Sterling. Maybe you don't believe in historical fixtures like that. I'm sort of in the middle. I think Sterling is going to have confidence going against Bournemouth. I think he has a lot to prove as well, not being in the England squad. Being really close to getting an assist and potentially a goal last time against Nottingham Forest as well, and not getting it. That was pretty unlucky for Sterling. So yeah, I think Sterling against Bournemouth is a really good player to have. So I would not be looking to sell him at all either. And I don't think you should sell either him or Jackson if you have both of them or either of them personally in your teams as well. Then we have Mbeumo, who I'm more than happy with starting against Newcastle, as we saw on this the past screen with the focal points and talisman type of players. Brentford are probably going to have less than 50% possession against Newcastle, but that might suit Mbeumo because he is really good no matter what. He's also on free kicks and penalties and stuff as well. Some free kicks and corners because Matthias Jensen takes a couple of them as well. But yeah, I think Mbeumo can get points against pretty much everyone. Brentford can get points against pretty much everyone. Brentford have been a really good team so far, even though their 2-2 draw against Bournemouth last game week wasn't the best. But Bournemouth are kind of sneaky. Like, they can perform in some matches, Bournemouth. So yeah, I think Mbeumo is still a really good player to have and player to start. Then we have Haaland, who is currently my captain, plays against West Ham away, which is going to be a tough fixture in terms of scoring goals. But we also know Haaland scored twice against West Ham in the opening match last season. We know that he's a machine. He scored a hat-trick last time around. He scored a goal for Norway in the European qualifiers in the international break. Really nice header from him where he just got a back post cross and just headed it home pretty easily. So yeah, Haaland is pretty much just a safe captaincy option. I think, like I said, Salah is the potential sneaky captaincy option I might go for, but at the same time, it's going to hurt extra if Haaland scores against West Ham and I don't have him as captain. At least if he scores against West Ham, I'm not going to be happy, even if he would be my captain, because yeah, I don't want West Ham to concede against City. But at the same time, it will also be sort of like a consolation that at least I had him as captain if he scores. But I don't know, you shouldn't really captain people out of fear, so maybe I should go with Salah. But like I said earlier, Salah is a differential no matter what, so I'm in a position where I don't really need to take any huge risks to do anything really. I'm in a pretty comfortable position with my team, so Haaland as captain is most likely where I'm going to go, but Salah is still in consideration slightly there. And then we have Alvarez, and that is the kind of interesting thing about this team. Julian Alvarez played in Bolivia, really high altitude for Argentina, played 85 minutes without really impressing that much either. For Argentina, just now on Tuesday, I think. He's already back in training with Man City though, which bodes well for him starting, but I kind of want him to not start, partly because I don't want West Ham to lose against Man City, like I've said a couple of times now, and Alvarez is a really good player, which would help Man City if he's able to play. But also because that if Alvarez doesn't play this game week, he's going to play in future game weeks. And this game week, I have a pretty good backup in Saliba, who plays against Everton. I think Saliba has a pretty good chance of having a clean sheet. I'm not going to start him over Estepinian, but I might start him over Alvarez if we get some team news that Alvarez is not going to start the game. But even if we don't get any team news at all, maybe I'll still bench Alvarez for Saliba, but that would be a risky play. I think if Alvarez plays 60 minutes plus, he's a better pick than Saliba. But if there's any indication that Alvarez doesn't play, I'll be more than happy to play Saliba, who has Everton away. Already discussed Flecken playing against Newcastle away. Not going to start him over Turner. And the other bench options that I have is Cameron Archer playing against Spurs away. Like I said, he could score and delete the clean sheet for Udogie, but I'm not going to go for Archer this game week. I'm pretty happy to have him. And then Kabore as well plays against Fulham away. One of the better fixtures that Luton is going to have is Fulham away, but Kabore, don't really expect him to start, or kind of expect him to start. I think he's going to get his spot back because Luton have been sort of just like trying out different things defensively, and I think they might be the type of team that changed their defensive lineup as like compared to who they're playing, depending on who they're playing is what I'm looking for there. But yeah. So Kabore, I don't really have any thoughts about playing him either. So yeah, pretty much I'm standing pat. I feel like this team is pretty good. I'm probably going to go with Salah captain, but I might sell Saka for Maddison. That is something that I'm considering. I think over the long haul, Maddison is a better pick than Saka. That's why I picked him in my weekly wildcard draft over Saka. But at the same time, I don't really want to sell Saka if he is fully fit and ready to play against Everton. Like, there's no reason to make a transfer to sell a good player or a great player even in Saka playing against a pretty poor team. So yeah. Ideally, I just keep my transfer and keep Saka, but if there are news that Saka might be injured, that might be the way to go to get Maddison. So, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts for the team selection for Game Week 5. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers pretty soon. Trying to get into the top 10k in FPL, and if I don't get to the top 10k, I'm trying to get 10k subs at least before the start of the next season. Otherwise, I will quit FPL, as I've said before. But yeah, that's just my final plea to you. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm going to try to make more content, make more engaging content, make like better slides and all that type of stuff. Look into more type of stuff. Like that's Kevin's catchphrase. Sorry. But yeah, I'm rambling. That's enough for me. Thank you for this episode, and hope you have a great day and a great game week.